The first speaker, Professor Galal Abada, is a professor of architecture and urban design of Ain Shams University. And from his biography, I see he's very rich in experience in urban designing and community. Dr. Abada's presentation titled Inclusive Heritage-Based Humanizing City, and will give correlation between Medina and Cairo. Dr. Galal, mic is yours, and please keep your time.
Thank you, Dr. Gad. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Jamal, for inviting me to this very significant conference. Actually, I would love very, very much to have it in presence, not online, as far as there are so many interesting lessons to be learned and exchange of ideas. But anyway, we have to live with the online. I'm Galal Abada, as you presented. I just want to add that I have some about 25 years experience in working with historical areas. I'm not a heritage conservationist, but I am an urban designer and urban development specialist working in a historical area, which is gives me more privilege to balance and to understand both sides, historical areas and urban development in this particular rich context. And maybe this will take us directly to the issue. The issue is that there is a quite different opinions, different attitude, different approaches between people who are working with urban, with the conservation of urban heritage and people who are working with urban development in many terms, in physical, in social, in economic, and even in the value and appreciation of heritage itself. This actually very apparent in the areas which I work in, specifically in the global south, in Arabia. I'm working primarily on Arab cities, particularly Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and part of Tunisia. I'm sorry. Yes. So what is the topic of this presentation? Is just to brief a number of lessons learned over my personal experience and related experiences in some cities. We're talking about how to integrate heritage areas within the global urban agglomerations, the global cities, surroundings of the heritage areas. And this is not a physical, not just a physical intervention, not just a physical perspective, but it's more practical one and more realistic experience in many regions. So what is inclusive heritage-based development, which I suggested here over some projects? We see that heritage has a role as economic, social, environmental development drivers. Actually, urban heritage is an asset, is a resource, and not just an object to preserve and giving it as a museumification. It's like a museum. It's mixed with people. It is done by people. It is made by people, and it is for people, and it will continue to serve people. And this, of course, implies so many aspects to come. So the issue or the topic is increasingly significant in many parts of the world, as actually heritage is an important asset in communities. And this is, of course, implies that everyone should have an access to it. Access to it is not just physical access, but in many terms that we will describe. Often, unfortunately, urban development policies do not guarantee a balance between the requirements of conservation, heritage conservation, and the physical intervention done. Cairo is an apparent dramatic example for that. Historic Cairo has been witnessing and still witnessing many manifestations actually harming any kind of balance, cutting through the historic urban tissue of the city, the social form, the social cohesion, destroying so many aspects, and actually that needs this needs an urgent intervention that balances both heritage preservation or heritage conservation and urban development in this particular rich context. This calls for an inclusive process where all social inclusion, economic, even physical, are integrated in a way or another. So fostering social inclusion necessitates actually the providing opportunities for social and cultural interaction. There is no sense of belonging, actually. Sense of belonging, how to recreate sense of belonging in the historical cities or historical areas. How can we provide meeting places that can accommodate everyone with any background, ethnic background, gender, or whatever of origin, within a framework of social interaction, cultural exchange, and many others? How can we strengthen the cultural diversity in a city? Not in a city at large, but more specifically in historical areas. That is, in a way or another, a mini region in the south are abandoned in a way or another, and it becomes a sort of enclave, the enclosed enclaves, or sometimes it's ghettos, that is serves only its destination. It's not integrated with overall cities or over urban surroundings. How can we provide equal access to diverse opportunities in the historical areas? Not just normal opportunities like facilities, like education, public space, healthcare facilities, and other needs, but more to appreciating heritage itself. How can heritage be a resource for development, a human-focused development, not only as hardware, as buildings and places, but also as software? The cultural patterns, the intangible heritage activities, the living in cities, the traditional styles, the traditional lifestyles, and so on. So building places that can be more sustainable and resilient future can be foreseen. I will start with a number of actually 3 projects we have done in Medina over the past 5 years, and some initiatives in Cairo. It's not for comparison, but actually there are a set of lessons learned I would like to highlight it with you. For many of you who does not know Medina, Medina is the second tallest city in Islam, located in the west of Saudi Arabia. Actually, Medina has a very long history. The history of Medina is the history of Islam. As far as Prophet Muhammad moved to Medina almost 14 decades ago. And Medina developed over history as cultural, religious, social, urban agglomeration, and becomes a metropolitan right now. So actually it represents censuses of the presence of the Prophet Mosque. Prophet Mosque is a destination for millions of Muslims every year. Traditional heritage of Medina, not only heritage in physical terms, but intangible heritage as well. Landmarks, spaces, roots, historical roots are there, and the wonderful natural landscape, as well as various intangible elements, memories, narratives, colors, odors, even food and fashion. The most famous characteristic of Medina is the diversity and the multicultural atmosphere in the city, where actually many visitors from different backgrounds, almost 164 nationalities are coming to Medina every year. Of course, because of the corona, now it's very limited to the people who are living in Saudi Arabia. And you can imagine the cosmopolitan atmosphere and the exchange of cultural principles, interaction, and fusing between residents and visitors. Visitors of Medina is about 1.3 million, and it can reach, this is a month, it can reach about 1.5 in the holy months of Ramadan, and of course during the Hajj season. Almost 5 years ago, we started a program in Medina. It's called Humanizing Medina. Humanizing Medina is simply to get back the human dimension, the human scale, the human values in the city spaces, city areas, housing areas, older areas, and gave a special focus on the heritage of Medina, just to promote a sense of concern about people, either residents or visitors, how people live, how they work, how they play together, how to interact in the same spaces sometimes. And we believe that this is an essential part to be on the right way to plan a sustainable city for the future. Actually, we have had ambitious plans for Medina till the year 2040, in which this topic, humanizing Medina, is a major or crucial principle for the strategy and the plans for that target. So a number of interventions were planned under this Humanizing Cities, Humanizing Medina program, and these interventions actually has been set on or suggested on different scale levels. One important scale level is the connectivity between these places, the connectivity between heritage roots, heritage sites, and the destination. We develop number of guidelines, principles to deal with historical places, historical sites, routes, and so on. Even natural heritage also sites are there. Valleys, wadis, and mountains, significant mountains also are there. So you can imagine that you have a city where physical heritage or tangible heritage is mixed with natural heritage and is also mixed with a very sound and rich intangible heritage aspects. So we are talking about a real historic urban landscape is still intact. So we start with some parent projects. One of them is the located in the city center. Actually, it's a boulevard that connects the Prophet Mosque, which is in the center of the city. The city is a radial one in terms of its morphology. And this Koba Road is connecting this the Prophet Mosque to another mosque. It's called Koba Mosque, one of the very famous, significant historical sites and religious, Islamic religious important site also. It's about 3 kilometers, and the boulevard is actually heavily used by visitors and also by residents. So along this boulevard, you can find all types of architecture and that expresses historical barriers in the city. Of course, there is no monument, a particular monument in the boulevard itself. There are sites. Most of the monuments are under the process of modernization. The cities that took places in the 70s and 80s were, in a way or another, disappeared within the city center for many reasons. So the boulevard actually is a hub for activities, and you can imagine that this hub and this important historical route was heavily used by cars for a long time, actually until 3 years ago. So cars were dominating everything in Medina. If you know about living in Saudi Arabia is one of the Gulf cities that relied typically on private transport, on private cars. And you can imagine how many streets, how many boulevards, how many parking places you need. And of course, the impact on the city, impact on heritage, impact on places where people gather. So we started with one simple assumption is that if you are planning for a car, you will get more cars, more and more cars. Of course, the implication of more and more cars will have a lot of negativities, not just on the physical environment, but also for the historical sites. But if you are planning for pedestrian, of course, you will get more people to come and more interaction and more appreciation and more inclusion, more social inclusion, specifically in a city where almost the local inhabitants equals to the visitors. So the project was to pedestrianize the street, to preserve all historical buildings, actually all buildings, not just historical buildings, but many types of intervention. And it included also a number of reviving some streetscape elements, just to retrieve image of identity, to reinforcing the sense of a place that was historically known for these elements. like for instance, traditional lighting or seats or the street, the shops of frontage or some gathering places and so on. A second project, which is very interesting, a very small one, a small community of about 43 houses to the south of Medina, about 12 kilometers. And actually, it's a very close community, a very historic one. It has witnessed some historical battles, and there are many historical narratives about it. It's about 40 families that are living in these 43 houses and some very limited facilities. Sometimes planners are considering this kind of older areas informal or shanty areas, which is actually a big mistake. And this has also happened in many areas in the Arab cities, like in Cairo, for instance. We could survive 3 areas from demolishing when fighting with responsible authorities on the definition of shanty or informal areas. Historical areas are not informal areas. They are decaying, they are deteriorating, they are challenging the pressure of uncontrolled urbanism or uncontrolled urbanization and many unguided interventions here and there, but they're still historical and they still have the authenticity and consistency of heritage. Anyway, Hamra al-Assad is a very particular community. The task was actually twofold, is to provide or to improve the living condition of the areas and to provide some very limited and affordable urban and architectural interventions to enhance the heritage context, also to stress the sense of belonging for people, to make people pride of their heritage and their community, to make them owner of their community and their cities, and care of course, if this happens, they will care much about their community, about their cities, and of course, they will sustain it for future generation to come. This is some aspects of the improving of houses and facilities. But the most interesting thing is that this was not a conventional project. It was an initiative by some of the intellectual and the artists in Medina, where they consider that why not to give another approach to improving the upgrading of this community, to impose art as value in a way or another. And they relied on a notion is in Islam is the neighbor rights. And they also relied on techniques using the calligraphy. Arabic calligraphy is very famous with very beautiful artistic values, of course, expressions also. So actually, there were 5 people who talked to the young people in the community and also older people, and they could gather it and work together, the intellectuals and the artists with the local communities. They got support, political support actually from the governor of Medina and from the municipality. And this was donor in a way or another. Infrastructure were provided by the municipality, and the renovation were all donors from different parts of the community. You can imagine that
you have 2 minutes.
1 million Saudi riyal. I will jump quickly to the other case studies. We have Sayyid al-Shuhada is very famous historical sites in Medina.
You have 2 minutes, Dr. Galal.
I have to stop?
2 minutes more.
Okay, I heard you. So Uhud battle site is very important. We apply the same approach, but here we have the challenge of connecting the heritage sites, of relying on heritage as a development resource. I'll jump quickly. And this particular one, it wasn't just the heritage as physical entities, as objects or monuments or sites, but also we relied on the intangible heritage aspects, engaging the community in that, even help them to improve and enhance their traditional intangible resources. Like for instance, they are very famous with traditional food. So we helped them in how to packaging their food, and even we created sort of festivals and social gathering like food festival and so on. Moving quickly to Cairo, Cairo is a quite different thing. I would like very much to highlight some examples in the 2 minutes. You know, all Cairo, I don't have to reintroduce it. Cairo is a famous World Heritage property listed on the World Heritage list since 1979, expanded and modified, and transformation have been done. Cairo is mixing everything. Cairo is listed as a total entity, as total cities, not as monuments, not as single sites. But of course, you have ideas on that. One of the major problems of preserving Cairo and the development of historical Cairo is the heritage is totally separate from the overall urban context. And the intervention done with the historical context had nothing to do with heritage, and heritage has nothing to do with the urban surroundings. This lasted for many years, actually, and this was a major reason for the deterioration of many areas of the urban tissue, the urban and social tissue on the city. So many proposals have been done over the past 50 years. Very little has been implemented. One of them was a very significant, important one, and there was another one. Okay, I'm moving to a specific project here. It's called Beit al-Suhaimi restoration. Actually, the area, it's one of the older area in Jamaliya to the north of the city. There were 3 attached houses to each other. These are historic ones, different eras, and a small sabil. Sabil is a water place, a drinking place for people who are passing through or visiting and so on. Along with a historic small street, a lane, it's called Harid ad-Darb al-Asfar. The task was to restore these 3 houses, open them together, and to see what's the possibility of any kind of appropriate adaptive reuse. This had been done almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I'm sorry. And the most interesting is that 15 years before the implementation of that project, which means almost 35 years, there was a very widespread urban development context, the urban development project for the whole quarter, including Al-Darb al-Asfar and including the 3 houses. Neither the architect or the restorer at that time, the late Dr. Assad Nadim, nor the people who has done that know each other and know what has been done before. And there is no, of course, integration, and this is the most important thing. Nothing has been integrated within the overall areas because simply the conservationist looks at the houses, a restoration, adaptive reuse, etc., and the planner looks at something quite different, and they don't meet, never don't meet. In the past years, we have witnessed a very positive senses to engage people and engage many, let's say, groups of the community to come, people, poor, rich, intellectual, ignorant, to come to celebrate a part of a public event. Like here, for instance, the Drums Festival. This is very famous annual festival. Also, some of the elite, let's say, high cultural events like this one, that was an exhibition all over the historical buildings in particular area in historic Cairo, highlighting installations and some very interesting paintings, but more related to the high cultural elites and not engaging the residents. So the residents are seeing people who are alien from them, coming to see something alien in their historical areas, in their communities. We see very promising initiatives also, like this highly interesting project to the south, engaging people in the management. I'm coming to the conclusions. This is also one of the interesting projects. So the lessons learned here from Medina and can be learned also for Cairo, that inclusive heritage or inclusive heritage-based development can provide models for improving not only living condition in specific historical contexts, but also engaging local communities, having access for everyone to come. And of course, this will provide sense of ownership, belonging, and pride. And the inclusive heritage-based development should or can maintain a socially integrated communities, connected, distinct, and vibrant heritage places for social interaction. And the rule of inclusive heritage can be extended, and actually it is needed to value historical area and cultural landscape as assets, resources, not just conventional practice or responsibilities or problems to be solved. It's not problems to be solved, they are resources. They are visions for future development, for more inclusive and sustainable city development. Conservation schemes needs to look beyond the protection of isolated sites towards integrating with urban socioeconomic cultural conditions. And such emphasis on heritage as an asset and fundamental quality of the city can become a crucial success factor for reaching humanized cities. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I got 1 minute more. Thank you.